Hello Internet, just waiting a little bit for folks to show up. Let me scoot my mic platform a little bit closer. I need like to get an end table or something, because right now I'm just using a chair to prop my mic up on, which is not the most ideal of setups, but I mean, I'm not doing this professionally. I just play video games on the internet because it's fun. Anyway, I'm just gonna chill here for a minute or so. Wait for folks to arrive, as I am wont to do. I'm gonna wait a little longer than usual because this is going to be a shorter stream today. It is probably not going to go for 3 hours, for reasons that will make themselves apparent towards the end. I guess in the meantime we can just watch Nier's idle animation. I think I've said this before, Nier is not the protagonist's name, it's just the title. I forget what the word means, if it means anything. It might have just been made up because it sounded cool. But I don't know what the protagonist's actual name is, if anything. I don't think he has a canon name, because, like, you know, you can... because you name him at the start of the game, so... But, like, it could be a Final Fantasy X situation, where his name is Tidus, but, you know, you can rename him wherever you want, technically. Because... which has the unfortunate side effect of making all the voice acting awkwardly dance around his actual name and just says, "Hey you," or "Hey kid," or "Xanarkin boy," or whatever. But, that game has a lot of growing pains, since Squaresoft at the time were new to the PS2 and they were new to full voice acting, or even voice acting at all, really. But I still like that game a lot. I don't know if I'll stream it, but I do enjoy the game. Yes, I am rambling. But it's my stream. I'm entitled to do what I want. Within reason. I think I'm gonna wait a couple more minutes. Again, this is gonna be a shorter stream than usual anyway, so this shouldn't matter too much. I wonder what Nier's thinking about. This is, of course, a sad piano arrangement of the end credits music, Ashes of Dreams. Very fitting for heading into the final part of the game. Nier is getting quite bored with waiting for me to do something. If nothing else, this will be an easy part to skip over for the VOD watchers. There's not many of those. But I do get at least a few views on those uploads. Alright, I've probably put this off long enough. So, I mentioned at the end of last stream that I was going to postpone this stream until I finished fully upgrading all the weapons. Now, when I said this, I was at level 42, and I was at like 40-something hours of game time. This took me 15 hours to do. And I also gained 12 levels in the process. It took a while, but now all the weapons are fully upgraded. These weapon stories were not part of the original game. I think they were going to be added in, but there just wasn't enough time for it. So they were originally part of this art book dealie called Grimoire Nier that was released a couple years after the game originally came out. It's like a combination art book slash list of stuff that the developers wanted to put in the game, but just did not have the time or the budget to. And the weapon stories were one of those. And I think it's pretty cool that the weapon stories were formally incorporated into the remake. Like a lot of stuff, actually. A lot of stuff that we've encountered was originally part of Grimoire Nier because they couldn't fit it in the original game. The weapon stories, the whole Luis subplot, other stuff that we'll get to, let's say. Now, in addition to reading on the weapon stories, I figured we could, look at these weapons, and I'll tell you where to get them, and all that. So first, we gotta start with the Nameless Blade, a simple sword forged by a village smith, more suited to fending off small animals than actual combat. This is your starting weapon. So, no special requirements to get it. Its story reads as follows. Smash, 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 smash. Sweat rolls down the faces of hardscrabble men as they chip away at ironstone, their cheerful singing echoing through the mine. We are workers, workers in the mine. Dirty from tip to toe, again today we search for iron with all our might. Smash, etc. Foom, etc. The sound of women stomping on bellows in the mill. The sound of iron being gathered from the scorched sands. We are workers, workers in the mill. Workers who send wind. Today we stomp the bellows again with all our might. Foom, etc. Clang, etc. The sound of swordsmiths wielding hammers at their forges. The ringing of such transformative blows is stunning indeed. We are swordsmiths. Swordsmiths who bring blades to life. Lords of steel. Clang, etc. Rip, etc. The sound of flesh being rent on the battlefield. The sound of killing enemies. Killing someone. Killing humans. Someone help me. It hurts. It hurts so much. Help me, mommy. A lot of these are going to go like that. The whole weapon story deal has been a thing since the original Drakengard. I guess it's just a concept that Yoko Taro really likes for whatever reason. Next, the Lily Leaf Sword. Let me pull up my notes here. You get this from... You can buy this from any blacksmith in Part 1 for 2,400 gold. A narrow sword once owned by a woman of such impossible beauty that men begged her to take their lives. This sword was originally appeared in the first Drakengard, and there it was called Writheheart. A lot of these weapons are from the original Drakengard, actually. I love him with all my heart, as he does me. When we cross paths outdoors, he sends signals with his eyes that only I can understand. He treasures my gifts so much he keeps them locked away in a safe. Oh, I couldn't ask for a better lover. I can't believe this. My best friend deceived the love of my life and stole him from me. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone. All that remains are some of my gifts, which are scattered across his empty room. Everything else of value has been sold at the village marketplace. This will not stand. He hasn't abandoned me, he's just being tricked by that woman. I know he still has feelings for me. He must. I'm far more beautiful than she is, and he knows it. Oh yes, he knows. But I must make him see the truth, and quickly. I have to get her away from him. I have to kill her. Kill! Hurry up and kill. Consumed by her madness, the woman slaughtered the young husband and wife, hacking them with such force that the blade of her sword warped. The woman then went into hiding, leaving behind only clumps of unrecognizable meat and a sword with a horribly bent blade. But no matter how many smiths attempted to repair the sword, it never again retained its original shape. Like I said, a lot of these are going to be like this. Similar levels of morbid and or sad. I don't know how similar these Drakengard 1 reference weapons, I don't know how similar their stories are going to be to their original game. Anyway, next is the Nirvana Dagger. A group of girls use the sword to consecrate a new temple with their own blood. You get this in the Lost Shrine in Part 1. I think it's in a box like before you reach the top, I think. This weapon also showed up in Drakengard 1 and 2 as the Maiden's Kriss. The girl had been betrothed to a local lord on the day of her birth. As she grew, her days were taken up studying proper bridal technique, while her evenings were spent staring out her bedroom window and offering prayers for her betrothed to the night sky. "Oh, my lord, if only you would come to me but a single day sooner." Her home was occupied by several other girls her age. Each one shared the same betrothed, and spent her days studying bridal techniques and her evenings praying to the night sky. "Oh, my lord, if only you would come to me but a single day sooner." One day, a quarrel broke out as the girls argued that only the greatest among them could become their lord's betrothed. None would yield an inch, each asserting only they alone could possibly satisfy him. Seeing this, their caretaker said in a kind voice, "Worry not, girls. Each and every one of you shall surely become bride to our lord." Hearing this, every face lit up in an expression of pure joy. On the day they were to be married, the girls were brought to a place of cobbled stone they could see from the windows of their home. A single dagger was then placed before them, and the girls were told they needed to end their life here and now if they wished to meet their betrothed. Upon hearing this news, the girls scrambled to seize the dagger from one another, plunging it into their chests the moment they held it. Years later, a temple named the Betrothed was built on the spot where the girls took their own lives. Next is Moonrise. You get this automatically during the first half of the game, on your way to Seafront for the first time. A weapon owned by a blind swordsman. The blade shines in darkness, making the owner easy to spot. This weapon is in all three Drakengard games, where it's called Moonfire. There is a legend of long ago that speaks of a nation threatened by a great inferno. This nation, however, was saved from eternal hellfire by a sword with the power to freeze anything. Around the sword stood thousands upon thousands of human ice sculptures. A man on a journey to seek out weapons eventually discovered the sword. He wrapped it in several layers of cloth and took it with him, placing it in the bag he carried upon his back. But before the man realized what was happening, the cloth, the sword, and his own body ended up frozen solid. A traveling shrine maiden eventually discovered the sword. She offered a prayer to her god and gripped the hilt, but cold instantly shot through her fingers and into her body, freezing her solid. In her final moments, the shrine maiden unleashed words of great blasphemy to the god who had failed her. An enslaved woman in a mine eventually discovered the sword. Desiring an easy death over the continuation of her daily suffering, she grasped the weapon firmly. And while the woman did not freeze, she was also unable to pierce her own flesh. Soon, moonlight shone upon the blade of the weapon, reflecting the sight of the woman being beaten and dragged away by her master. Next we have Rebirth, which is given to you by the King of Facade after you complete the Barren Temple in the first half. A unique sword with a round blade. Legend holds that it robs the wielder of his life force. This weapon is in Drakengard 1, where it is called Ravenfeeder. That's right, this here's the weapon that'll be ending your life. Aw, don't sweat it, there's nothing to worry about. It'll be a pain the likes of which you've never felt before. In fact, you won't even feel pain at first. It'll be more like water sliding across your skin. Honestly, for most folks, it ain't the pain that makes them scream. It's the sight of their own blood flowing out of them. Yeah, it won't end so easy. See this part of the blade right here? This part hurts like a real son of a bitch. It's my favorite, which is why I always save it for last. I like to use it after people's voices get too hoarse and you can't tell what they're saying, which is a real... Fucking hell, are you ever loud? Mind piping down there? You're gonna make my hand slip. I won't kill you right away, so don't worry about a thing there, champ. I'm gonna take my sweet time before you finally give up the ghost. Honestly, you'd be surprised at how much it takes to kill a person. I mean, think about it. People got 2 eyes, most of them anyway, and 2 ears. 10 fingers, 10 toes, 20 nails across the lot. And don't even get me started on joints, because folks got hundreds of the damn things. Yeah, we got plenty of ways to keep ourselves entertained. Huh? Why am I doing this? No, ain't that a question. Buddy, I'm just doing what you've been doing for a good long while now. Nabbing innocent citizens on fake charges, torturing them, and putting their severed heads on display. That ring any bells, buddy? It should, because it was all you. Guess maybe you forgot about all that, eh? Well, that's okay. I'll spend all the time it takes to make sure you remember every last thing you did to my wife and daughter. Next we have the Earthworm's Claw, which you can buy from the Facade Blacksmith for 4,000 gold in the first half of the game. Made from the fossil of an ancient beast, it's more unwieldy than most swords, but further forging can't help. This was in the first Drakengard as Dragonhook. An elderly scholar sits in the dim reference room of a moldy museum. Before him lies a single box which has long been sealed away. It is an article the museum's previous curator made abundantly clear should never be opened. It is said the box contains a fossil that drinks the blood of humans. What foolishness! One would think we as a people would have outgrown such nonsense. Only someone who spends all their life surrounded by books could possibly believe such preposterous superstition. He opens the box, which spits forth a cloud of dust, and beholds a single stone of bizarre shape. Looking at the attached handle, one could easily conclude it was used in some manner of ceremony. However, it could also be viewed as a weapon. And what a fascinating shape. Yes, this will require rigorous research indeed. How foolish everyone was to be afraid of something like this. The scholar chuckles softly to himself as he reaches up and gouges out his left eye with the fossil's tip. You know, as one does. Next is the Blade of Treachery. This one is interesting. When a man who has lost his way wields this sword, the blade becomes blunt as wood. You find this in Emil's mansion in the first half of the game. Now, this weapon was in Drakengard 1 and 2, where it was called Scald Song. But, more interestingly, the original Japanese name of this weapon was the Devil Popol, which is where Devila and Popola got their names from. Yes, they got their names from the Blade of Treachery, which is a little bit on the nose. Anyway. Speaking of the sisters were puppets of complex machinery. So fine was their construction that any who laid eyes upon them assumed they were human in every way. They were the embodiment of man's greatest technological achievements. They walked like humans, ate like humans, laughed like humans. The one thing they could not do, however, was shed tears, for they were not designed in that way. Because the sisters were machines, they felt nothing. Oh, they might mourn as humans did, but they experienced no true sadness, for they did not know what sadness was. Even when their friends perished in tragic accidents and their creator died of disease, they felt nothing. To the sisters, all it meant was that those people no longer existed. It was a warm spring's day when a lone cat wandered into their home. It was a scrawny, filthy thing, riddled with disease. What a bother, the sisters thought as they looked down at the wretched creature. But they fed it milk, wiped it clean, and kept it warm, and soon the cat was well again. From that day forth, it would linger wherever the sisters were, brushing against their legs when it wanted food. If it caught a mouse, it would bring it back to boast its prowess. If it wanted love, it would cry out to them in a mewing voice. What a bother, the sisters thought. It was a cold winter's day when the cat came into their house, let out a feeble squeak, and died. Time and again did the younger sister shake the cat's body. Time and again did the elder sister call out to it. But the cat neither moved nor responded. In that moment, the sisters felt as though they felt something break deep inside their chests. And from that day forth, they truly felt nothing at all. interesting when you think about that story in relation to the ending events of the game and how they behave there. Anyway, next is the Beastbane. A sword that bears a beastly motif. Its short, thin blade seems eager to vanish from sight. You buy this from any blacksmith in the first half for 16,800 gold, and it is the best weapon in the first half of the game, bar none. Long, long ago, in a faraway kingdom, there lived 3 brothers. The middle brother was a famous general who commanded a vast army. People everywhere were terrified of his troops, for they were most violent indeed. This general loved to make war. He enjoyed nothing more than watching cities burn and corpses pile up, and he fought not to subjugate, but simply to destroy all that he could. His well-trained soldiers laid waste to towns, cities, and even nations for the sake of their general. And as they hewed and hacked and chopped, the general would chuckle to himself in the most vulgar of tones. The army marched on and on. Nations by the sea, nations in the mountain, nations in the deserts, nations in the tundra, nations to the east, nations to the west. The general cared not. He simply wished to watch it all burn. His orders were absolute, and for years beyond counting, the soldiers killed, etc. After some time, the army arrived in a certain nation. They killed its soldiers. They killed its town people. They killed its princesses and princes and dukes and bakers and lawyers and accountants and beggars and thieves. Eventually, a shabby general came pleading for his life with tears in his eyes, but they killed him as well. However, the soldiers thought he seemed familiar and tried to recall how they might have known him. In that moment, however, the general's daughter appeared, and they became so engrossed in ending her life, they never thought about the matter again. Next is Faith, a sword carried by the world's most loyal servant. Like that loyalty, the sword's blade is straight and true. You can get this in a couple ways. Either you can get it in the Forest of Myth by freeing all of the people there from the Death Dream, or, if you miss it, you can buy it in the Aerie in Part 2 for 18,500 gold. Let me see here. Faith was in Drakengard 1, where it was called the Nobuyoshi. There was once a famous poet in a land to the far, far east. Now in his twilight years, his ability had withered such that he could no longer craft a single stanza or verse. The poor poet spent every moment racked with sorrow for what had been lost. But one day, a monk appeared by his side, gently placed a blade in his hand, and imparted the following words. Kill 1 by this blade for 1 poem, and 2 for 2 in kind, the likes of which will be more splendid than any this world has ever heard. Clinging to the monk's words, the man waited for the cover of darkness and cut down a man he encountered by the roadside. The following day he wrote a most beautiful poem, instantly reclaiming the fame and prosperity he had lost. The poet went on to kill 2 in succession. He killed 1 and wrote a poem, then killed again and wrote another, rising to almost dazzling levels of wealth and renown. But soon, he became obsessed with knowing how splendid a poem he might write if he were to kill someone precious to him. He killed his wife and wrote a poem. He killed his children and wrote a poem for each. He moved through his estate, killing everyone there, writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. Eventually, he killed so many passers-by that the poems could not keep up. He would kill and write, then kill and kill and kill and kill, until in the end he took his own life, no longer crafting poems at all. All that remained was a blade wet with blood. Let's see here. Next is the Ancient Overlord. An ancient warlord used this sword to slay his loyal subjects in hopes of gaining eternal life. You're given this by the King of Assad in Part 2. Yeah, they super are, Mr. Chris. Like I said, a lot of them are either really, really disturbing or really sad, or both. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Let's see here. The Ancient Overlord appears in the first two Drakengard games, where it is called the King's Blood. There once was a royal sword passed down in a prodigious kingdom that had prospered for generations. It was said the crystal embedded upon it contained a great magic, and should it ever absorb the blood of 10,000 people, it would glow bright red and grant its wielder immortality. However, this kingdom's final ruler, known to the world as the High King, valued the continued prosperity of the kingdom he had inherited from his ancestors over any prospect of eternal life. One day, the queen, the king's dearest love, lost her life in a tragic accident. She was with child, and the tragedy occurred shortly before the babe was to be born. Distraught with grief upon hearing the news, the aged king found himself unable to accept the prospect of his royal bloodline dying with him. In an attempt to continue the kingdom's legacy by attaining a body without death, the now mad High King used the sword to cut down any and all subordinates or citizens unlucky enough to cross his path. "If I am to be the final king," he was heard to cry, "then the kingdom survives so long as I live." He killed his subjects by the dozens, the hundreds, the thousands, and with each life he stole, the crystal's light grew more radiant. But when the crystal was nearly full, the king's ailing heart proved unable to bear the burden and burst, killing him on the spot. Alas, had he just slain the pregnant woman and an unborn child that were before his very eyes, he would have taken exactly 10,000 lives. Something to keep in mind is that, like I said earlier, a lot of these are from the original Drakengard, and OG Drakengard is a messed up game. Like, capital M messed up. Anywho, next here is the Phoenix Dagger. You can buy this from the Seafront Blacksmith for 31,200 gold in the second half of the game. Ceremonial blade crafted from feathers of the legendary Firebird. It is untested as a weapon. Indeed, because I haven't used this thing. There once was a woman who promised her hand to a man who was departing for the front. Devout by nature, she spent mornings, afternoons, and evenings in prayer for the safety of her beloved. Perhaps in response to her earnest pleas, one night a bird enveloped in light appeared to her in a dream and began to speak. "The man you love will surely return safely," said the bird in a beautiful voice. These words brought great comfort to the woman, and she began weeping tears of joy. "However," continued the bird, "his heart will surely not." Soon, the man returned as the bird had foretold, his body covered in scars beyond counting. But as the bird had also foretold, he returned with an unfamiliar woman of extraordinary beauty at his side. Despite this, the pious woman could not contain her love for the man and ran out to meet him as he approached. Surprised, the man embraced her, then collapsed to the ground. The pious woman stood over him, a bloody dagger in one hand and the ripe crimson fruit of his heart in the other. "His heart will stray no longer," she whispered. Amidst the gathering pool of blood, her face awash with pure ecstasy, she placed a tender kiss on her beloved's heart and offered a prayer of gratitude. Yeah, that's a fair point, Mr. Chris. That does make sense. This here is the Labyrinth's Whisper. Forged from steel and liquefied beast fangs, the blade is red with the blood of countless sacrificial offerings. You get this in part 2. I think it's tied to a side quest. I don't recall offhand. Anywho. So this girl had a huge set of horns on her. Beautiful horns like a bull, just growing out of her head above her ears. I had myself a gander at where the horns met the head, and let me tell you, they were coming straight out of her skull. She was the only kid like that in the whole village. The others were all normal. The kid with the horns, though? Born real small, apparently. The horns were, I mean, not the kid. And hell, they would have needed to be. Fat chance the kid's mama would have been able to push out a pair of horns huge as that. What a laughter onomatopoeia. You'd think a girl like that would have been bullied, right? Well, you'd be wrong. That kid was the hardest person for miles in any direction. Wasn't a man in the village who'd tangle with her. And we're talking men what ain't scared of nothing. She was the best at doing work what needed physical strength and all that, and she always led the charge whenever shades attacked. And folks loved her for that, sure. But most of all, they loved her because she was always cheerful and just plain tough. But one day, this huge shade attacked the village that was just too strong. It tore the men apart like old rags, and half the guys in the village died. The girl with the horns fought with all she had, but eventually she couldn't keep up, and the shade lifted her off the ground and ripped the horns right out of her head. The way she screamed was like nothing you've ever heard. The sound shook the earth itself, it did. After that, things got real quiet, so I stepped outside and found both the shade and the girl dead. Each of them had wounds all over, and they were leaking blood out of just about everywhere. And don't judge me for saying this now, but it was almost beautiful. Like looking at dark red flowers in full bloom, you know? I hope that answers your first question about why folks in this village can't hear nothing. But you should know, none of us think badly of the girl for making us this way. Being deaf is a hell of a sight better than being dead. Anyway, we've all talked over that day to death, and we think that final scream was her way of saying goodbye. Everyone in the village is honored that the last thing we ever heard was her farewell. And that's the God's honest truth. This here is the Fool's Embrace. A sword created after a man, driven mad by revenge, sealed away a cursed dragon. You get this from doing the, from completing the first recycled world door. And if you'll notice, it looks a lot like Angelus from the first Drakengard. I'm sure that is intentional, and I'm also pretty sure this is the strongest one-handed sword in the game. I was saved from the despair that shackled me. I was freed from the fate that cursed me. I was pacified from the indignation that plagued me. I was changed by the day I met you. My flames will scorch the earth below. My fangs will know the taste of blood. My claws will rend my enemies asunder. My wings will soar the skies above. If your eyes are to be robbed of their light, if your skin is to be stained with blood, if your sword is too heavy a burden, if your lips can no longer produce speech, even if this body is snuffed out, even if these words are stolen, until our contract is complete, until the moment this warmth is lost. I'm pretty sure this is written from Angelus's perspective, actually. That's neat. Finally, we have the iron pipe. One-handed swords are the biggest category of weapon in this game. You use this in the prologue, but to get it in the game proper, you can do a couple things. You can either A, complete the side quest called A Magic Stone, or if you play through to watch ending B, then when you start an ending C or D playthrough, the game will just quietly drop this in your inventory, for whatever reason. A relic of the civilized age. Its rusty scent comes from the blood of all who dared oppose the wielder. Whoops. May 21st. We finally run out of money. Food just costs a lot more nowadays because of the war. That refers to backstory stuff that we don't have time to get into. We tried begging at the church, but they have their hands full caring for the wounded and can't spare anything. Yona's really lost a lot of weight. I wish I could get her something to eat. July 15th. We met a nice lady who gave us some food. At first I thought she was homeless like us, but she said she was joining some kind of relief and support thing run by the government, so we decided to go with her. At least Yona seems to be doing okay today. August 1st. That nice lady from before used a book and turned into a monster. We ran away as fast as we could because I don't think she's human anymore. Everything those adults told us was a lie. They won't give us money and they won't treat Yona's illness. Also, there's a huge wall around the city now and we can't get out. We never should have come here. August 5th. It's so cold today. I can't believe it's summer. I can actually see my breath. We decided to hide from the monsters in an abandoned supermarket. We found a few old cans of food there, but now those are gone. Also, Yona's cough just won't quit. I've got a really bad feeling about this. This is obviously written from Prologue Nier's perspective just before the prologue starts. This bit about the lady touching a book and turning into a monster, that also refers to backstory stuff. The developers wrote like a pretty big outline of backstory for this game, and then most of it is just not in it at all, like not even mentioned. I think that's on purpose too. Anyway, we're finally done with one-handed swords. Now we can go on to two-handed ones. This is the Kusanagi. A man whose fiancée was spirited away by an 8-headed beast used this sword to smite his foe. You start off with this weapon automatically in the second half of the game. You don't need to work for it. The shield left hanging on the wall was covered in dust. The blade left in its scabbard had rusted over. The techniques I hadn't used were forgotten. The body I was to train was left to grow soft. I had lost the will to practice discipline. I thought things would end without a single word said. I pretended not to see violence inflicted by others. I had given up, assuming things would never change. I believed there was no way to oppose such a great power. I sneered at hearts that tried to believe anyway. I laughed, thinking them brainless fools. Those were the thoughts I had taken refuge in. I had given up, believing nothing was possible in the end. I lamented the foolishness and ugliness of it all. My life had lost all meaning. I had lost sight of those who were precious to me. I could not believe in their kindness. I was unable to save them from the grief that tore at their hearts. I had forgotten the courage it takes to protect the smallest of joys. I believed my words would never reach you. Let's see. The axe of beheading. A man's dementia drove him to attack his daughter's fiancé with this axe. Sadly, he hit his daughter instead. Of course he did. You can buy this from the blacksmith in your village for 19,200 gold. This axe was in Drakengard 1, where it was called the Love Keeper, of all things. There once was a ritual gathering of spirits held on the night of the 10th full moon of the year. During the ceremony, they would gather on the shores of a lake and boast to one another of all the evil deeds they had performed during the year. Oh man, don't talk to me about lakes. Been going through it lately, vis-a-vis lakes lately. The first spirit took great joy in telling of the unfathomably cruel ways she had killed some of the finest soldiers in the land. Over the year, she had transformed her shape into a lady of the night and called out to various men, then tore off every last piece of their body when they came to her bed. The soldiers, ashamed their skills could not save them, shed bitter tears as they died, and the spirit claimed they were the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. The next spirit regaled the others with a story of cunning and guile. One night, she threw a small boy into a bog. When his older sister came to rescue him, she, too, sank into the murk. These two were followed by their parents, then other siblings, then extended relatives, until finally every member of the village was sleeping at the bottom of the bog. When the spirit finished her story, she was so beside herself with glee that she did not even notice the saliva that dripped down her chin. Gross. Nervously, the smallest spirit in the group stepped forward to adjust the crowd. "I am the most amazing of us all," cried the oft-ridiculed spirit at the top of her lungs. "For it was I who thrust all living creatures into terror's deepest depths." The other spirits, unable to contain their mirth, collapsed to the ground and rolled about. Their laughter did not cease until the horrifying monster the small spirit had summoned from the demon world devoured each and every last one of them. Next we have the Fang of the Twins, which is not related to Devila and Popola, actually. It's just called that. A giant, accursed axe that was bathed in the blood of young twins before being presented to the gods themselves. You find this in the underground facility beneath Emil's mansion. We've been together since we were born. We're together when we eat, when we sleep, and when we dream. We share everything. We share the milk we get from Mommy, and the nice things Daddy says to us. But we're not together when we die. Daddy took me and cut off my head, and Mommy took my sister and cut off her head. But it's okay. Our blood got all mushed up into a big axe, and now we can be together forever. Man, whoever wrote this, I don't really think they were trying very hard with that one. Anyway, next is the Vile Axe. A mage with a putrid soul imbued the essence of a fire lizard into this axe. You can buy this from the blacksmith and seafront for 21,600 gold. The girl stares at the sight before her. Her father lies nearby, carved to pieces by countless blades. Her mother also lies dying, as well as her newborn baby brother. All had suffered terribly in their final moments, and the girl can do nothing but cry as she stares at the three soldiers who have murdered her only family. Years later, the girl reappears, her visage made strong by her vow for revenge. The first soldier has grown so fat that the buttons on his uniform can barely contain his girth. The girl approaches him and claims to know an easy way to lose weight. On the pretext of an examination, she has him lie down on a bed before suddenly hacking off his arms and legs with an axe. The remaining lump of soldiers screams and attempts to wriggle away, but the girl pins him down and tells him he still has parts he can lose. Sometime later, the girl sits in front of the now rounded torso and smiles. "There we are," she whispers. "Look how nice and slim you are." The second soldier is a peerless Lothario. Each night, a new woman is invited to his manor to spend the night. The girl breaks into his home and kills the women at his side, then uses her axe to hack off his manhood as he trembles and begs for mercy. The third soldier has long since left the service and is now living a quiet life with his family in a remote village. After they have fallen asleep, the girl takes her axe and cleaves the support beams of the house, causing it to collapse. She then sets fire to the wreckage, creating a great bonfire that can be seen for miles in all directions. Suddenly, the soldier's son crawls from the wreckage, covered from head to toe in terrible burns. As his eyes fall on the girl who has murdered his family, she hands him her axe and flees into the dark of night, never to be seen again. Oh, I forgot to mention, the Fang of the Twins is in the first Drakengard, where it's called the Twin's Fang, and the Vile Axe is in Drakengard 1 and 2, where it's called the Foul Blade. Next is the Beast Lord, which you get in the Lost Shrine right before you fight Gretel, I think. A beastly sword whose keen edge stands ready to mow down all who question the divine right of the wielder. Long, long ago in a faraway kingdom, there were 3 brothers. The eldest brother was a king who ruled over the nation entire. He was a most terrifying king, feared by all. Each day, the king would select one of his subjects to execute as a sacrifice. This day, he chopped off a mother's head and forced her family to watch. The head spun 3 times as it flew through the air before landing next to the head of her son, who the king had previously killed. Oh, the horror of it all. But the king merely watched the sight unfold before him and laughed in a most unsettling voice. One day, the king contracted an illness most dire, one which caused his body to rot while he was still alive. That sounds like leprosy. But though diseased, the king would still drag his decaying flesh to the executions all the same. His retainers dared not defy their king, so they continued to kill, day after day after day after day. In the end, the king rotted and died. His was a disgusting, foul, rotten death, but his retainers continued carrying out executions before the king's rotted corpse every day. Every day, killing. Every day the rotted king and the rotted remains and the rotted citizens. And the rotted you. Odd note. Next is the Iron Will. An enormous sword that grows heavier with every kill as blood and flesh cling to the blade. You get this from Gideon. He gives it to you as part of the story. This weapon is in all 3 Drakengard games. In the first Drakengard it's called Hymir's Finger, and in the other 2 it's called the Broken Iron. It's also a giant Berserk reference. I'm sure if you think about it for 2 seconds you'll figure out why. I raised the cry of my birth, the sound of heated iron taking shape, a steel mallet striking my form. Born to deliver karmic justice, I enter the world under the careful watch of spark and flame that give light to the gloom. I am a blade born of a deafening roar. I am a weapon. I am Iron Will. I grant death. I transform the dread and screams of my foes to elation. I festoon my iron skin with their viscera. When I rob them of life, I am filled with dark joy. When I crush them beneath me, I find meaning in my birth. And I continue to kill that I might share this delight with all. I kill and kill and kill and kill. I am a weapon. I am Iron Will. I am shattered. At Battle and Blood's End, my body is torn asunder by malice and hate. Today, I again engage the Red Dragon in battle, and magical forces meet leaping iron fangs to create a bloodstorm. My steel cursed, I sink into the slumbering black. I am a weapon. I am Iron Will. I dream. It is the dream of a small butterfly. In it, the butterfly is caught in a light rain, struggling against it with all its might. In the darkest of nights I behold a dream that will never come true. I am a weapon. I am Iron Will. Next is the Phoenix Sword. A large sword used by temple guardsmen, and supposedly made from feathers of the legendary Firebird. You find this in the Shadowlord's castle after you talk to the doves to open the door, but before you go through that door. This is a story of a time long, long ago. There was once a beautiful bird with resplendent feathers that lived a quiet life deep in the forest. One day, a lost child wandered into the woods. He came from a place of famine and had been abandoned in the forest as a way to reduce the number of mouths to feed. Taking pity on the feeble, starving child, the beautiful bird plucked one of its own feathers and gave it to him. When he returned home, his family was overjoyed by the feather and permitted him to live with them once more. Hearing the child's story, one person after another descended on the forest to tell the beautiful bird how poor and unfortunate they were. Each time, the bird would pluck a feather and give it away, pluck a feather and give it away, until it had no more to give and its once beautiful visage had become shabby beyond recognition. But the shabby bird had no regrets. One day, the original child appeared before the shabby bird, which was featherless and freezing in the cold. He had come seeking a bird with resplendent feathers, that he might repay the creature's earlier kindness. Overjoyed, the shabby bird said to the child, "It is I you seek. If I might beg a favor, would you hold me to your chest and warm my freezing body?" Sparing a single glance at the shabby bird, the child called it a liar and cut it down with a large blade. He then roasted the bird, ate every last part, and set out anew to find the beautiful bird who had once saved his life. This here is Labyrinth Song, a sword forged from metal and liquefied beast horns. Its dull glow lures people deep into the labyrinth. You get this as the quest reward for completing the side quest, Disturbing the Sleep of Kings. It was a beast that lived in a cavern's deepest, most untouched depths. It had massive horns, a body like steel, breath of scorching fire. The peace-loving villagers hated this monstrous beast with the head of a bull and the body of a human. They feared it, and soon the beast came to be known as the Minotaur of the Labyrinth. Contrary to its terrifying appearance, the Minotaur was exceptionally kind. Not only did it refrain from harming other creatures, it took great care not to trample flowers beneath its oafish feet as it walked. Indeed, the reason it lived so deep inside a cavern was to help avoid frightening the villagers. One day, a lost girl wandered into the beast's cavern. Frightened by the sight of it, she cried so hard she eventually passed out, which left the beast in quite the quandary. "I have no choice," the beast finally decided. "I must take the poor thing back to the village, for her mother and father will be terribly worried." 2 days after the girl vanished, her panicked parents found her sleeping soundly in front of their home. On the ground a short distance away was the dead body of the Minotaur. It had been impaled by several swords, and the blood scattered around it held an almost otherworldly quality. Yet there was no indication the beast had attacked the girl. In fact, it looked as though it had been trying to place as much distance between itself and her as possible, so as not to dirty her with its blood, almost as if it didn't want her to be afraid. And then, having curled up to make itself as small as possible, the monster died. Finally, we have Fool's Lament, a weapon with a heroic dragon motif, used by a man who tried to save the world. You get this from clearing the second door in the recycled world. And it also looks like Angelus, funny enough. This is almost the strongest weapon in the game. I say almost because there's one that's stronger, but we don't have it, but we'll get it at some point. I'll explain later. It'll make sense later. Don't worry about it. Memoir, June 6th, 2003, approximately 1500. A massive white humanoid, initially called the Weapon, but since renamed the Giant, falls from the sky above Tokyo's Shinjuku ward, inflicting tremendous damage. At the same time, a large red creature, henceforth referred to as the Dragon, appears and engages the Giant in combat, though both the nature of its attacks and their utility remain unclear. As the self-defense force contemplates methods by which they might attack the target, the government establishes a Bureau of Emergency Countermeasures. June 12th, 2003, approximately 1600. The giant, which was locked in combat with the dragon, suddenly begins to collapse for reasons unknown. The dragon is then shot down by the 6th Division, 303rd Squadron of the Air Self-Defense Force. No official record exists of who issued the order to attack the dragon. Work has begun to retrieve the remains of both the giant and the dragon, but no official verification has ever been made regarding which organization performed the retrieval. December 2003. The first case of white chlorination syndrome is confirmed in Tokyo's Shinjuku ward. July 2004. Humans continue to turn violent due to white chlorination syndrome, with fighting growing increasingly intense in infected regions. With the cause of the disease still unclear, the infected are isolated and violent riots suppressed by force. Main thoroughfares are sealed and rail transportation is halted, later leading to all of Shinjuku being sealed off. At this time, the prospect of asking the American military for non-official intervention is considered, but the government defers. Meanwhile, research begins on Maso particles obtained from the giant and the dragon, as well as on countermeasures for white chlorination syndrome. This research ultimately leads to the founding of Project Gestalt a decade later. Okay, so I was going to talk about this later, but apparently I gotta do it now. Let me get a drink first. Okay, so this is talking about Drakengard's ending E, where the protagonist of Drakengard, Kaim, and his dragon partner Angelus, they get pulled into our reality, or at least our reality in the fiction of this game, by this horrible giant salt monster called the Grotesquerie Queen. They fight it in a pitched battle, and eventually, Kaim and Angelus kill the Grotesquerie Queen, but then they're shot down by the Japanese Self-Defense Force. This was a bad idea. So, in the Drakengard universe, magic exists, but humans can't normally use magic. But they can enter into something called a pact with a magical creature, which lets them gain magic powers. In order to enter into a pact, the human has to give up something that's important to him. Like, when Kaim enters into a pact with Angelus, he gives up his voice, which is the reason why he's a silent protagonist after the first, 2 levels. So, this white chlorination syndrome thing that this story is talking about, that is actually a result of the dead remains of the Grotesquerie Queen trying to force a pact onto the surrounding human populace. And humans can't accept this pact because magic is not a thing in our universe. So what it does is it either just straight up... So white chlorination either just straight up kills somebody who's infected with it, like turns their body into salt, or it basically turns them into a violent zombie, like of the 28 Days Later variety. So the government seals off Shinjuku and builds this huge wall around it called the Wall of Jericho to try and contain the infected humans, but the situation gets worse and worse, and eventually the UN decides to nuke the place to try and cleanse it from the earth. But that was an extremely bad idea, because all that does is spread the Grotesquerie Queen's particles into the atmosphere, which means the entire world eventually starts to get infected with white chlorination syndrome. That is obviously super bad. So the governments of the world are trying their hardest to find any way at all to combat this. So they found the Gestalt Project. And the goal of this project is to separate the human soul from a person's body. Because they figured out that if the person doesn't, they figured out somehow through enough research, I guess, that if a person doesn't have a soul, then they can't, then they're not subject to the rules of a pact, and therefore they can't fail the pact, and they don't get white chlorination syndrome. So the plan is to separate people's souls from their bodies. The souls are called gestalts, by the way, and then they make biomagical clones of the people called replicants, and those are made with the help of those Maso particles that are mentioned in the last paragraph of the story. That's basically ambient magical particles from the Drakengard universe, I think, is the best way to describe it. So they make replicants, which are these biomagical clones, to basically keep the bodies living indefinitely in a way until the Grotesquerie Queen particles are finally fully cleared from the atmosphere, which is a process that takes many, many centuries. So that's a hastily, possibly badly given explanation of most of the backstory leading up to Nier, I think. If you remember earlier, in the Iron Pipe weapon story, let me bring that up actually. Yeah, Nier talks about this lady touching a book and turning into a monster. Unfortunately, there's some sort of flaw in the replicant production process where if the replicant's body gets damaged in a certain way, I forget exactly how it works, but basically the body will break down over time and relapse and turn into a mindless sort of monster that doesn't work anymore. Those are shades. Gestalts are also shades, but they manage to hold on to their humanity and their sentience. Their sapience, I should say. So back when people were trying to work out the kinks of the Gestalt project, they were trying to find a person who become what they call the perfect Gestalt, who could separate their soul from their body without eventually relapsing into a renegade shade. And that person, so they made a whole bunch of copies of Grimoire Noir to test this out. And they sent it out into the populace, basically. These special copies of Grimoire Noir would forcibly turn people into Gestalts. So they were trying to find somebody who would be turned into a Gestalt and not relapse. This is what happened to Nier and Yona in the prologue of the game. Nier found that copy of Grimoire Noir, and he just happens to be that perfect person. He kept his humanity, and for a long time he kept his human form, which is why he's the Shadowlord. But unfortunately, when Yona touched the book, she was already sick previously. So when she touched the book and was turned into a Gestalt, she started relapsing immediately. So when Nier took his sister to the government, he was like, "Hey, help me out, please. I don't want my sister to die." She's like, "Okay." They were like, "Okay." So they told him about the plan, to wait until the atmosphere was cleared, essentially. So he's like, "Fine, I will wait patiently, and you will find a way to save my sister from relapsing. If you don't, I will take matters into my own hands." And that's what happens when the Shadowlord kidnaps Replicant Yona in the first half of the game. He finally ran out of patience. He's like, "Screw this, I'm taking matters into my own hands, I'm getting my Yona back." So yeah, there's more to say, but that's most of it. That's most of the backstory. It's like I said, it's kind of a lot to then leave most of it out of the game on purpose for whatever reason. Because this game isn't really plot driven. It's much more of a character driven sort of story. So honestly, I think it's fine to leave most of this out. Sorry, I was getting a drink of water. I was talking way more than I was already expecting to. Anyway, let's just start reading about... Anyway, let's move on to the spears, shall we? Anyway, this is Transience. A knight was so moved by the suffering of a beggar that he removed all ornamentations from the spear. You start with this in the second half of the game. Also, fun fact, if you'll look at this spear, and then look at the spear that the soldiers of Facade use, you'll notice they're quite similar. So I think the implication here is that they gave this to him as a gift at some point, but at some point in the 5-year time skip between the first and second half of this game. They were a frighteningly diligent people. They would clear forests and hunt animals even when they had no need. They developed techniques to preserve food they were unable to eat, and earned more money than could ever be spent. Yet there was not a single one among them who did not accept these practices, for none knew of any other customs. They were a frighteningly studious people. Their grasp of calculation and science exceeded any pretense of practicality. and they would repeatedly engage in spirited debates regarding predictions of the future. They invented an increasingly difficult language, and created an infinite series of complex machines which they would immediately discard. But there was not a single one among them who looked back, for none knew of any reason for concern. They were a frighteningly obedient people. Without ever being told, they would greet the morning sun at the same time, in the same clothes, while toiling away in the same cramped rooms. Yet there was not a single one among them who complained, for none knew what else they should be doing. Having worked far too much, the people lost their forests and took to living atop the sand. Having grown far too intelligent, the people conversed in a language that no other peoples could comprehend. Having grown far too well behaved, the people were unable to defy the laws that would be established one after the other, and came to live their lives enclosed by tens of thousands of rules. This is of course about Facade. The last line gives it away. Alright, next is the Spear of the Usurper. A spear used by a prince's body double to slay his emperor. The traitor was later killed with the same spear. You can buy this from the Seafront Blacksmith for 21,600 gold. This spear is in all 3 Drakengard games, where it is called the Robber King. In a far-off land, there was a man who acted as a double for the nation's prince, performing duties in his stead as was required. One day, having finished his work, he returned to the prince's chamber to find the princess lying naked in his bed. As the double stood in place, dumbfounded, the man who shared his face sneered and invited him to join them. The double loved the prince's sister, and he felt that the princess, who admired him as her brother, loved him as well. Indeed, she was the only thing that kept him going in an otherwise miserable job, for the prince was a most despicable man indeed. Eventually, it came to pass that a war was to be waged under the prince's command. The night before it was to begin, the prince took his double aside and promised him a night with his sister if he could bring him the head of the enemy general. And as the prince chuckled with delight, the double took up his spear and thrust it through the prince's gaping mouth. The war over, the prince made a queen of his sister, and would inflict wounds upon his own face and throat, an act which would occur every time she called out to him using her brother's name. Before long, the prince was found dead, his face burned and a spear thrust through his open mouth. The man's face, hideously burned, was the very picture of serenity. That was just nasty. Anyway, here's the Devil Queen, the favorite spear of a mad queen whose lust for power led her to kill all of her son's wives. You find this in the Lost Shrine as you go through the rear path for the first time. This weapon was in the original Drakengard, where it was called the Widow's Death. This story takes place in a small country at around the same latitude as the northernmost member of a nation of city-states that are part of a region with a village that is attempting to establish a trade agreement with another village on a tiny island in the ocean south of a country that used to have an alliance with a republic next to a kingdom where a queen resided. Oh, these are all going to be like that, huh? Okay. It was asked by the owner of a shop frequented by a wet nurse who looked after the child born of an adulterous relationship by the wife of the master of a foolish servant who fell in love with the beautiful queen who appears in the poems of a minstrel whom was loved by the country's king's wife's little brother's cousin's big brother's son-in-law's foster child. Where does one store the throne that was supposed to be adorned with decorations crafted from the materials of the handle of the lid of a pot that is the same weight as tableware that is the same color as a weather vane on a neighboring house that can be seen from the peephole of a door in the reflection of a mirror, with an ornamental frame decorated with silver carvings engraved with a fragment that was made when creating the whetstone used to polish this kitchen knife? Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. The person who heard that question was the wife's husband's little sister's big brother's daughter's groom's little brother's nephew's father's mother's husband's bride's niece's father-in-law's wife's husband's little sister's big brother's daughter's groom's little brother's. I think that it just keeps repeating. Yeah, it does. Christ. Anyway, sunrise. This spear's point is so finely honed that all who are grazed by it experience an instant, painless death. You can buy this from the village blacksmith or the area blacksmith for 21,600 gold. This weapon appeared in Drakengard 1, where it was called Fing's Glaive. In the distant past of a land known as the Golden Isle, There existed a sword crafted from every kind of metal and precious gem in the land. So sharp was its edge that even the slightest cut would leave an unsealable wound that eventually drained the victim of both their blood and life. In a strange turn of fate, the sword eventually ended up in the hands of a destitute woman who sold her body to get by. The sword was as long as she was tall, and she could not wield it effectively, so she instead slid it between her sheets as a surprise for the men who used her. The sword was so sharp they felt no pain when cut, and soon died without even knowing it was happening. The woman would then help herself to their coin, causing her own purse to swell. Making use of her gains, the woman dressed most beautifully, and soon had acquired every kind of metal and precious gem in the land. But it was not enough for her, so she decided to melt down the sword and obtain the gems contained within, a desire made manifest by the sword's beauty. Thus decided, the woman heaved the sword to her shoulders and made for the blacksmith. But on the way to the smith, the sheer weight of the sword caused the woman to lose her balance, and she fell from a bridge into the river below. So unshakable was the woman's greed that she could not bring herself to relinquish her grip upon it. The woman's pale and bloodless corpse was found washed up on the riverside the following day. This here spear is Beast Curse. A noble lord commissioned this beastly weapon that the world might stand in awe of his power. You find this in the junk heap just before the boss fight with Khalil and P-33. Long, long ago in a faraway kingdom, there lived 3 brothers. The youngest was a terrifically lazy lad who spent most of his days fast asleep. However, he was every bit as cheerful as he was lethargic, and so was beloved by all. When the nation was beset upon by a most contagious disease, the youngest son did naught but laze about the palace, humming to himself all the while. But his cheerful music comforted the townspeople, so instead of hating him, they sang his praises. "Oh, what a fine young man," they would say. "Just the finest young man you will ever find." When the nation became embroiled in war, the youngest son did naught but laze about the palace, telling stories of the good old days all the while. But his fascinating stories helped the townspeople forget the horrors of war, so instead of hating him, they sang his praises. "Oh, what an amazing young man," they would say. "Just the most amazing young man you will ever find." One day, the youngest son was lazing about the palace as usual when he realized he could no longer hear the voices of the townspeople, and he wondered why that might be. He lazed and he wondered. He lazed and he wondered. He lazed and he wondered. Eventually all that wondering tired him out, and he went to sleep. That is why, in that nation where all have perished from war and disease, the only sound that can be heard is the soft snoring of a young man. It is a nation of happiness, etc. Next we have the Captain's Holy Spear, a spear brandished by a warrior monk chief who sacrificed his own life to protect his comrades. You can buy this at the Facade Blacksmith for 30,000 gold exactly. And it appeared in the first Drakengard where it was called Battle Lust. The captain tramples life under his feet. The screams of others transform into songs of joy. Flowing tears change from despair into darkness. Conflict beckons revenge and gives way to new solitude. To the point. Next is the Dragoon Lance, a spear that symbolizes a pact between a great warlord and an ancient dragon. You find this in the Shadowlord's castle just before you get chased by a goose up the stairs. Let's see, this weapon appears in Drakengard 1 as the Knight's Vow. He had grown old. The king's dauntless gaze had lost its light, and his stalwart body had grown soft. What's more, every ounce of fear and vanity he had gained with age now gnawed away at his heart. The king was afraid, so he repeatedly ordered the invasion of neighboring countries so as to hold on to the lands he had been sworn to protect. The king was afraid, so he tried to take everything through violence and oppression, for he no longer trusted his own advisors and vassals. There was a dragon that had sworn fealty to the king. This wingless creature would do anything the king commanded, for he had been saved by the king once, and sworn to repay this debt with his very soul. Even if the king's orders were folly and madness, the dragon would follow them to the last, for his king was justice itself. One day, the dragon requested an audience with the king, He was covered in blood from his latest victim, the king's own son, who the regent had ordered the dragon to assassinate. The bloody dragon hung his head low and said, "I cannot defy your orders, O king, but neither can I obey them any longer. I beg of you, kill me and grant me release." This is a tale of a foolish king and a wingless dragon in a nation that fell centuries ago. Even now, the wind blows ceaselessly across the grasslands. It blows just as it did on the day king and dragon made their pact. Next is the Phoenix Spear. Forged by monks from feathers of the legendary Firebird, this spear was designed as a tool of self-defense. It is overall one of the best weapons in the game and my personal favorite to use just on a general basis. You can buy this at the Facade Blacksmith for 32,400 gold. There was once a warrior in a frontier nation who feared not death. He was so brawny and powerful, arrows were said to bounce harmlessly off his flesh. For this reason, the warrior always threw himself into the thick of any battle. One day, a beautiful bird appeared before the warrior in a dream. The bird commended the warrior for his valor in battle and offered to grant him one of two wishes. The bird could bring an end to war and grant peace to all the world, or the bird could bequeath the warrior an immortal body. The warrior chose immortality. From that day forth, the warrior's exploits were nothing short of astonishing. He mowed down foes in uncountable numbers. No amount of arrows or swords or axes could slow his march. The king showered him with gifts and titles, and for a time, it seemed the warrior's days of stunning glory would continue until the end of time. But conflict did not cease. Eventually, the warrior's frontier nation was invaded so often that the flames of war left the country to ruins. Crops withered, people perished, and before long, there were none left who even knew the warrior's name. The shattered warrior was tortured day and night by endless starvation, but his body refused to let him die. So he sought out the bird again and pleaded for it to grant him release. "Ah, but you cannot die," chirped the bird in response. "You will never die." Next is Labyrinth's Shout. Forged from metal and liquefied beast claws, this destructive spear is filled with a deep hatred for the world. You get this at the end of the Damaged Map side quest. She was a hopelessly slow woman, and possibly clumsy. It would take her 3 times longer than anyone else to accomplish a task. She walked slowly, talked slowly. She even blinked slowly. So slow was the woman that she could not even draw water to anyone's satisfaction. The children began calling her the cow and laughing when she passed by, but she would only chuckle in response. She was a hopelessly dull woman. When she fell and drew blood, she would carry on as though in a daze. Though coins often dropped from her purse, she never managed to retrieve one. And if someone spoke ill of her to her face, it would take hours for her to realize the insult. When the children saw her, they would hurl rocks with glee. She was a hopelessly foolish woman. One summer, when the village was suffering the most terrible drought, the woman vanished. The children all starved to death. The villagers spent no time worrying about the woman who ran away. 2 days later, rain fell and the village was saved, but the woman did not return. And on the 20th day, a shaman arrived at the village. The shaman held a spear with a pair of horns that was oiled and sticky to the touch. So heavy was the spear that none could wield it effectively, although even if they managed to lift it, the weapon was incapable of piercing through anything at all. The shaman forced it on the people and left it with them, but none dared approach it. And to this day, it quietly slumbers in a forgotten corner of the village. Finally, we have the Fool's Accord, a lance birthed as part of a pact with an ancient red dragon. You get this by clearing the 3rd door in the recycled vessel, and this weapon also looks like Angelus, funny enough. This is the story of a sorrowful prince, a tale of a kingdom in a time long past. Attacked by the forces of darkness, the nation was annihilated in a single night by inhuman soldiers with red eyes and a group of black dragons so numerous they blotted out the sky. Having infiltrated the king's castle, the black dragons visited upon the king and queen a most horrible fate. It is said that their stomachs were torn open by the black dragon's mighty claws, and the very floor they stood upon became a sea of blood. The prince and princess, though racked with sorrow, escaped to live another day. The prince, spurred by the shock of witnessing his parents' tragic end, became consumed by a desire to exact vengeance. This is the story of a terrifying prince, a history of a conflict in the long ago. Obsessed with laying low his hated enemies, the prince indulges in his vengeance day after day after day. Even when faced with foes who take heel, he chases them down and tears them apart from groin to gullet. The carnage is so horrific, his fellow soldiers whisper tales of how they saw him mutilating bodies that are already long dead. Perhaps because no commander can control him, the prince is sent to an even harsher battle. This is the story of a fooled prince, the whereabouts of fate in the long ago. The prince's next battleground is a castle that guards a goddess. He lays waste to all before him, hacking arms, cleaving legs, rending stomachs, gouging eyes, separating heads from shoulders. But soon the injured prince can no longer tell the difference between the blood that rains down and that which comes from his own wounds, and he collapses in a heap. As he writhes in pain, coughing up gouts of hot blood, he lifts his gaze and sees a hated dragon standing before him. This is the story of a mad prince, a meeting with a dragon in the long ago. An injured red dragon stands before the prince, and though it is a different color than the beasts that killed his parents, he feels the need to avenge himself upon it regardless. But as he raises his sword, the dragon says, "In exchange for both our souls, human, I will save your life and grant you power." After some thought, the prince makes the pact. It matters not to him what he might lose in the deal or that it involves a dragon. All he cares about is that he can continue swinging his blade. So he swings and swings and swings, and with each blow his heart fills with a desire as black as the deepest night. This, of course, is the backstory of Kainé, the protagonist of Drakengard 1, and these last two entries specifically are talking about the game's first 2 levels, which are the only levels in the entire game where he speaks, because when he makes a pact with Angelus, he gives up his voice in the process. So he was a chill dude once upon a time, when he and his sister Furiae were the prince and princess of an unnamed kingdom, but then the Empire invaded and killed his parents in front of him. Specifically, dragons ate his parents in front of him. So he snapped. And then Drakengard happens. There's a pretty famous cutscene that happens after maybe the 3rd level, where Kainé saves his sister, and she and their mutual friend Inuart are talking about something, and Kainé is just in the background just repeatedly stabbing a corpse over and over and over, and he does it for literally the entire cutscene, which is a couple minutes long. Because Drakengard is just the most deranged game on the PS2. Anyway, so that took an hour. Now we're ready to go see Ending D. As a reminder, to see endings C and D, you have to have at least seen Ending B, and then in a new playthrough, collect every single weapon in the game. You don't have to upgrade them all, you just have to have them on you.
Oh there.
I just upgraded them all because I wanted to see the weapon stories. And I don't regret that, but it did take an awfully long time. Actually, before we do this, I need to go take a restroom break really quick. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. So, I was talking earlier about replicants and how they're biomagical clones of people. They were not made sentient. They were just basically made to be as meat sacks that could be kept safe until the atmosphere was cleared of the grotesquerie queen particles. So, the people in charge of the Gestalt project eventually did discover that there was one way to avoid white chlorination syndrome, which is for a Gestalt and their replicant to merge, which is why that whole thing was done in the first place. This is the Shadowlord's plan. He kidnapped Yona so that her Gestalt could merge with her replicant, and she could essentially be a complete person, so she wouldn't die. The problem with that plan was that eventually the replicants just sort of gained sentience over time. That was not supposed to happen. That threw a wrench in the whole plan. And if a Gestalt merges with their replicant, the replicant's personality is completely overwritten. It's unclear if, well, I say that. They're either overwritten, or they're trapped in their own bodies, unable to do anything. And the latter thing is what has happened to Replicant Yona. We'll see that once we reach the Shadowlord. Unfortunately, nobody can really do anything about this because replicants and shades can't understand each other, so they can't communicate. I don't know why I bothered with that. I don't need to collect any items ever again. Oh, speaking of which... Okay, yeah. I took off the item drop rate word from the spear finally, because that makes shades a little tougher to kill in exchange for the increased drop rate. So I don't need that on anymore. Excuse me. Don't need to bother with any of you nerds. Oh my god, damn it. How did I overshoot the ladder? I have literally never done that. Across the entirety of my playing this game, I have never overshot that particular ladder and just friggin' dropped back to the bottom of the Lost Shrine. Jesus Christ. Pro gamer move. Let's try this again and not fall this time, huh? God. At least fall damage isn't a thing in this game. That dude was having a bad day. Never seen him stuck in a box either. Alright, let's not... God, let's not overshoot this ladder. Jesus. So, Grimoire Noir's part in all this is that he can forcibly cause all replicants to merge with their gestalts, but he can only do that if he merges with Grimoire Weiss. But of course, Grimoire Weiss doesn't remember that because when Nier freed him from his prison, he erased his memories. So, when we kill Grimoire Noir as part of the final boss fight, we essentially erase any hope of anybody ever being able to survive relapsing. Unfortunately. That plus killing the Shadowlord basically ensures the extinction of the human race. And the funny thing about Nier, our protagonist, is that even if he knew that, he does not care. Because the only thing that matters to him is saving Yona. He will do that at literally any cost. Anyway. We're here now before the final gauntlet. Which won't take too terribly long to run through since we're over-leveled and I'm no longer using the item drop rate words, and we have one of the best weapons in the game, and we have a ton of buff items.
And now?
So, we're gonna doom humanity in short order here. Back to the Shadowlord's castle. One of my favorite tracks in this entire game. It's so solemn.
Yeah.
What you must answer.
This password thing kind of vaguely hints at the whole backstory a little bit. Humans died out because of a black disease. The black scrawl, which is replicants relapsing into gestalt, into shades, basically. And humans can extend their lives by separating body from soul until such time as they're ready to be reunited, which we are going to screw up. And those souls placed in their corresponding shells.
It seems the way is open.
But of course, replicants were not supposed to gain their own sense of humanity. That kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing. Devila and Popola here were androids created as overseers to watch over a specific region of the world to make sure the replicants were kept safe. And they weren't supposed... They were just supposed to do that, but the problem is...
Devila, what's happening?
They got attached.
Sorry, but this
they weren't supposed to, but they did.
Instead, we spoke to truth. We really wanted to avoid this if possible. We were hoping to put it off for 100 years or so, until the next generation came along.
This is what they're talking about.
What are you talking about?
Are they shades?
I don't think so. It's a lie. I don't believe it.
We never thought we'd grow to be this powerful.
This is madness. Why do you block our path?
You have no cause to speak so with us, Grimoire Vice. You are a traitor.
They copied my powers.
Shit on a shingle. They can use the sealed verses.
Of course we can. The power came from us in the first place. You were simply loaned a small portion of it.
Vice! Are you alright?
Devila, Popola, why are you guys doing this? Why are you siding with the shades?
It is unfortunately not that simple, Nier.
Devila and Popola are fighting us.
They sure are.
Yes, they do seem to be putting us through a great deal of...
You okay, Vice?
How odd. For long years, my mind and tongue have been my greatest assets. But now the latter seems to be... Hell.
Vice?
Do not look at me like that. I am Grimoire Vice. I am perfectly...
And now we can go on.
I think I hear a waltz.
You do, Emil.
It certainly is a grand affair.
Bunch of dancing bastards.
They're all shapes.
I think we're locked in!
It's not
We
like
are.
I was planning to leave.
Yeah, it's a bit late for that.
All of this could be avoided if only the two sides could talk to each other, but of course they can't. They are literally incapable of doing so. And it is far too late for Nier and Co. to turn back now. They've killed too many people. That was quick. These are such assholes.
Damn it! I won't stop coming!
I'll open the next door. Cover me.
Working on it.
Oh, how I do love a good...
Twice!
Oh, right. Protect the hussy, yes? Good plan. Let's go.
Protect Kainé for us!
Kainé! Hurry!
It's not open yet?
Do I look like a goddamn locksmith to you?
No, you idiot. What are you doing?
Lock doesn't want to open? Fine. I'll just break it down.
Stop, you impatient fool.
Come on. Time to kill some literal babies. They extremely
freaking me
aren't
out.
Vice.
Kainé! What's wrong?
You know, an Ending B playthrough and onward is kind of uniquely brutal because the characters are not given any more context or understanding, but the player is. So you have to live with the knowledge of what you're doing as you're playing through the entire game again. It's it can be kind of rough. Now Goose shows up, she is rightfully pissed at us. We gotta keep going.
We don't need forgiveness, asshole.
Kainé?
And of course, Kainé can understand the shades because she's being possessed by Tyran.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Your heart is different. It ain't hatred, and it ain't sadness. What's going on here, Sunshine?
But she's not saying anything about it. Because if she does, Tyran will just take over.
I'm fine. Let's just kill some shit and move on, alright?
Now Goose is going to start regenerating. I'm not sure if you have to kill her a certain amount of times, or if a certain amount of time has to pass before we can leave.
Can you defend this thing?
But I'm just going to wail on her for a while.
Oh no!
I can't stop now. Damn it.
Stay focused, Kainé. Don't fall victim to such distractions.
Come on! We have to keep going!
Let's go!
Alright, let's go. Come on.
This way! Move!
Working on it.
Up here!
And I gotta sprint up the stairs for a little bit.
How can we deal with this thing?
Please, hurry!
Alternating movement like this is apparently the fastest
Damn it, I
form of
can't get
movement
it
in this
open.
game, according to speedrunners. And I trust them to know how to do things fast, so...
Attack incoming!
The entrance is locked too!
It seems we are in a bit of a predicament.
Understatement.
Oh, you pissed her off now!
Surprised I was able to dodge that.
Maybe you shouldn't have killed her friends. Look at her. So full of skull and hate. She's just like you, Sunshine.
Like you're any different. Hate is just another crutch for you.
Hey now.
You're in pain, you're lonely, no one likes you. So you try to hide it under violence and hate.
I'm not like that at all.
It's okay.
It is.
I'm the same way. But just realizing that isn't going to help. It's too late for us now. It's too late for everything. We're too far gone anyway. That's why we...
Any second now, King Facade is going to show up, so I can move on with this. There we go.
出槌汗ようり切ったおきっとだあらフェルアコ試練地無石音キラコフ
かつて
What are you doing here?
サルリプシーだそうカイザム特機論だろ
You are correct.
いやアラトテ三世隊
グワリとてトラス感化新人でバチ
あらフェルアコ
飛んだで蹴りごいたり
アッフィア土地地さったと止めるなカイザムチ
That's it! Get out!
えタッカール奇跡おあ
My friend.
Me. Change this. Of course, the King Exiled has sacrificed himself to stop Goose and give us time to get to the Shadowlord. Before we get to him, we have to deal with a certain pair of android twins.
Devil.
They, of course, are going to tell us the general gist of the backstory, but not all of it. And now we must fight.
You and us, we're the same. Tools in the hands of a master.
No. I'm nothing like you. Please, don't do this, Popola! You and Devila were like parents to me!
Those two have watched the world wither for time immemorial. The cruelness of such a fate is difficult to imagine.
I don't want to do this! I don't want to fight her!
Stop bitching and start fighting! It's the only way!
And then to stop Devila, Emil sacrifices himself. Of course, we know he's okay, but the rest of the party does not know. I'll let this go. Well, for a little bit at least. I don't think Nier would have gotten up here if Kainé hadn't forced him to. I think at this point he's just done. But, quote-unquote luckily for him, Kainé has taken charge. Alright. Time to fight the Shadowlord. Well, first we gotta destroy Grimoire Noir.
Here. Strike hard. Hold nothing back.
How can a mere tool hope to stand against the Shadowlord?
Don't speak in such a manner, fool. I am nothing like you.
I don't know why Grimoire Noir is such an edgelord.
Be careful!
I know!
Hey, sunshine. I ain't certain about this, but I think your heart is wrong. The hate is gone. The sadness is gone. It's just a bunch of white light now. What the hell's going on here?
You can't tell, Tyrant. You're not the only voice in my life anymore. I've experienced fear, hate, and now suffering. I'm a curse, a freak. I know that. But guess what? He still accepts me. He still forgives me.
Oh, come on. You're doing this for him?
I'm tired of this world and everybody in it. But I'll become his sword one last time. Vice, you alright?
Naturally, I am as fit as a fit.
Wait!
It is at this point that Gestalt Yona realizes the pain she's causing Replicant Yona and decides to take matters into her own hands. Unfortunately for her, this makes the Shadowlord extremely upset.
Kainé, watch over Yona for me.
He's basically lost his will to live at this point, but he's trying to take Nier with him.
Think I'm gonna sympathize with you? I swore to protect my sister and my friends. If someone puts them in danger, they must stand aside or be cut down. Now come on! Let's finish this! Wes, what's wrong?
You're freaking me out here, Vice.
It's shitty because they both want the same thing, but they can't. But they can't both be happy. Because if the Shadowlord gets what he wants, then Nier loses his Yona, and if Nier gets what he wants, then the Shadowlord loses his Yona. They both want the same thing. They just want their Yona to be safe, but due to their nature, they're entirely at odds with each other. And again, Shadowlord is he's just giving up.
Something to defend. I have a reason to live.
God, that line is so cruel. That line is so cruel to the Shadowlord. There goes the human race.
Well, ain't that precious?
I'm happy for him.
You know, Sunshine, that black scrawl has almost completely taken you over.
Yeah, I know.
But goddamn, we had fun, huh? Killing and killing and more killing. What a rush.
Yeah.
Wait. No! No, no, no! It wasn't fun at all! I turned you into a killing machine. I spread evil and chaos around the world. But it all feels so empty now. Why? I don't understand.
Sorry. Looks like you stayed inside me for a little too long. Sunshine.
Stop! Don't be nice to me! Don't make me feel like this!
Unfortunately for Kainé, Tyran is relapsing. Which means she's going to turn into a shade very quickly.
Gonna swallow you whole.
Hi, Parl. You're just in time to watch the final ending sequence. It's going to be very sad.
Kainé? What is it?
Listen to me. The shade inside me is growing, and I can't stop it. Soon, real soon, I'm gonna go berserk.
I can't hold it back anymore.
Kainé, you have to fight. You have to...
Just shut up and listen to me. Emil is gone, all right? So there's no way anyone can stop me. Please. Before it comes to that, I want you to kill me. Consider it a final request.
Sunshine! It's not like I can stop it! When Gestalts go out of control, they lose their minds! Both of our memories will be completely overwritten!
Kainé!
This first part of the fight is scripted. We just have to last until it's over.
Damn it! I have to do something. I won't!
Unfortunately, can't absorb these projectiles anymore because Vice is gone.
We made it this far because you were with us, Kainé. I'm who I am today because of you. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm not going to abandon someone I love. I'm going to save you. I swear it!
Alright, now we can actually fight her.
Well, there might be one way to save her.
Who said that?
It don't matter, so don't ask. Just shut up and listen.
Wait, are you?
I said, listen! There's a way to save Kainé's life, all right? But you're gonna have to make a difficult decision.
Understatement.
Do whatever it takes.
When the time comes, I'm going to pin Kainé down. And as soon as I do, you need to stab him in the heart.
No, I can't!
Fine. Don't believe me. Stand around with your thumb up your ass and watch her die a terrible death. if you want to save your precious Kainé, there are 2 ways to do it. One is to plunge your sword into her chest. That's what she wants after all. Freedom from burdens, freedom from life.
What's the other way?
The other way is to make her a normal human being again. But to make that happen, you gotta trade your own existence for hers. Well, there you go. Good luck with that.
You're that shade. The one who lives inside Kainé. Why are you trying to help her?
Probably for the same reason you are. Enough talk. Make your choice.
So, here we are, once again. Last time, we picked the first option, which leads to ending C. This option leads to ending D. I first played this game back in, I want to say either 2012 or 2013. I just recently graduated high school a couple years ago. I was not doing okay. I was dealing with some pretty bad, undiagnosed depression. And, playing this game gave me an outlet for those feelings. I didn't realize it at the time. But, it helped me deal with all the bad mental shit I was going through. So even though these plot beats aren't hitting me as hard as they did the first time a decade ago, it still kind of gets me a little bit. Now, when the game says sacrifice your own existence, this is not just talking about narratively. This isn't just a plot point. This is maybe the thing the game is most famous for.
You'll disappear from this world. Your sister, your friends, everyone in your life will forget you. You and any sign that you ever existed will be erased. But in exchange, Kainé will return to her mortal life.
See, if we sacrifice ourselves, if we erase our existence, the game is going to delete all of our save files. Not just the one we're using right now, all of them. It's all going to be gone. Our side quest progress, our weapon collections, all of our notes, all of our fishing records, everything is going to be gone. The game makes this abundantly clear. I've always thought, and the developers seem to agree with me, that ending C, where we mercy kill Kainé, makes more sense for Dad Nier, and this ending makes more sense for Brother Nier. So, well, here goes nothing. Oh, of course. Just to really rub it home.
you all right?
Yona?
It was you. The one who helped me, I mean. Wasn't it? Thank you so much.
I'm glad you're okay.
What's wrong?
Huh?
I mean, you defeated the Shadowlord and everything, but you don't look happy.
I don't?
This is a lunar tear. How pretty. Are you crying?
Yeah. I guess I am. It's like I just found something special. Something very special.
It has always been like that, yes. Originally, in early concept art, her design was much more conservative, let's say. I'm unclear how they ended up on that. Yeah, this is probably what the original game is most famous for. Like, the game is asking you if you're willing to make a sacrifice, and it makes good on that promise. If you look closely enough at the credits, you'll notice that once we get to child and adult Nier's voice actor, they will be credited with question marks instead of the character's name. Jameson Price, Dad Nier, not credited with anything, just a blank. And I don't remember who voices adult Nier, or who voices child Nier, but adult Nier will be the same way, just a blank space next to their name. Damn. Ash's dream just stops in the middle of it. I guess to symbolize Nier fading from existence. there's a little bit more I want to talk about before we leave here, so don't go just yet. This didn't quite hit me as hard as it did back in 2012 or 13 when I first encountered it, but I still admire the commitment to the bit that the developers are showing here, merging narrative and game mechanics in a way that I haven't really seen before. Yeah, that is weird. I don't know why the credits are like that. I think they were like that in the original as well. I don't know why. They're just like that. Thanks for playing. Now, a few things. Now that we've seen Ending D, you'll note the lunar tear in the background of the title screen. Do you remember way earlier when I talked about lunar tears? How in the lore of the game, they're said to grant wishes. So just think on that for a little bit. We can't continue. There's no data to continue from. And we're free to start a new game, but we can't use our original file name anymore. It has been memory holed out of existence, after all. Now, you might think that this series would be over, and if we were playing the original game it would be, but there is more to be seen in Nier Replicant version 1.224744871139, etc. One more stream. I will see you all on Saturday, same time, 7 p.m. CST. We will see what is to be seen beyond Ending D. Until then, thank you all for watching.